What's up, guys? Classy Metal here. Going to have a bit of a long video for you guys today, so just kind of bear with me through this one. This one will take some time to get through. I thought of doing it different ways, maybe splitting it up, that type stuff, but this is one that I just kind of wanted to keep together. It's going to be a chore for me as well because I don't edit, I don't take breaks, that type stuff. It's just going to be one long, continuous video. So it's going to take some while. So it's going to take a while. I guess it's not a good sign if I'm already stumbling over my words. What I have for you guys today is a 100 CD grab bag slash mystery box from Severed Records. This is the largest mystery box that I've ever opened. It is the most expensive mystery box that I've ever opened. They offer four different levels of mystery boxes on the Severed Records web store. They have, I think, a 20 CD, a 40 CD, a 60 CD, and the 100 CD, which I purchased. This one was $225. So, as I said, it was a bit pricey as far as mystery boxes go. When you break down the cost per CD, it's only like $2, a little over $2 per CD. So that isn't bad at all. I hit them up luckily when they were having a promotion going, so I got free shipping on this mystery box. There's going to be some stuff in here that I don't know, that I've never heard of. Obviously, there's going to probably be some stuff in here that I already own, just from the simple fact that I have a large collection. I do a lot of grab bags, mystery boxes, overstock type purchases. I'm just going to get right into this. I'm not going to ramble too much. What I am going to do, I'm going to put in the work to list every CD in the description as well. I'm going to link up the Severed Records website for the store. I'm also going to have a direct link to their mystery boxes. That way, if you see this and you want to go check out what they've got, perhaps pick up your own mystery box, that will be there available for you. Also, like I said, I'm going to list all 100 CDs that I show in the order that I show them. That way, if you see something and you want to go back and perhaps you didn't understand me, or you want to just look a little deeper into that album, the name of the album and the artist will be right there for you, so you can go back and look that up. I'm just going to shut up and get right into this because this is going to be a long video. I am afraid I'm not going to spend just a ton of time on each CD, just for the simple fact that I'm going to be going through so many. This is heavy. This is about 20 pounds of metal right here. You gotta love media mail here in the U.S. as well, because they were able to ship 100 CDs for 13 bucks. So definitely take advantage of media mail if you're shipping stuff. And luckily, it doesn't look like there's too much damage to the jewel cases. I don't hear anything rattling around. I was worried that I was going to get a bunch of busted cases, but that does not appear to be the case whatsoever. So I'm just going to shut up. I'm going to get into this because we've got a lot of ground to cover. Lots of death metal, I have a feeling. Severed Records puts out a ton of killer, brutal death metal, some grindy, death grind, that type stuff. So just starting off, we have animals killing people with Eat Your Murder. And luckily, it looks like the glare that I've been fighting is not going to be as bad of an issue in this video. Knock on wood. Looks like some pretty nasty looking, gnarly death grind. I think that's death grind starting off. Definitely has a very grindcore feel going on that. Next up, we have some more animals killing people. This is a split between animals killing people and Andromorphus Rexalia with Phylum Morph-Apokalupsis. That's one thing about like brutal death metal and grind bands. They have the most ridiculous band names, and then the album names are usually even worse. I may have spoke too soon about the glare because it looks like it is showing its ugly face on this artwork. Pretty nasty looking stuff there. I have the pigs eating. It's like pigs eating human flesh. So pretty common theme, I think, in brutal death metal artworks. Oh, nice. Next up, we have a Anarkhon with Into the Autopsy. This is a pretty early Severed. I say early. I think it's like the number on the it's Severed Records release number 111, but they've released a ton of material. I'm surprised so far that all three of these releases that I pulled have all been Severed Records releases. I figured there was going to be some distro backstock and that type of stuff in this one also, but so far so good. Everything Severed Records, so I'm going to have a ton of new death metal to check out. I haven't owned any of this stuff either, so that's always a plus. Next up, we have Abdicate with Fragmented Atrocities, and that's some pretty nasty looking stuff right there. And this is another Severed Records release, so I'm pretty stoked with the way that we're starting off. Definitely starting off in the right direction with this grab box. Next up, we have Abated Mass of Flesh with Deathcrusher. That artwork just pops on this release. Not quite sure what that's supposed to be. Looks like we got some fire going. We have a cross up at the top burning, but that artwork on that cover just pops. Next up, we have Blaskhyrt with Ideological Carnage. And this is also on Severed Records. Just for reference, the one that I was talking about was an earlier release at 111. This is release number 282, just so you kind of have an idea. It's a very, very busy label. Has been for many years now. They've been a mainstay in the underground death metal scene for sure, especially the brutal death metal scene. I had a good spot going. There we go. I like that artwork on this one as well. That's one I think I'm probably going to check out fairly soon. Oh, nice. Now, next up we have Breeding Filth with Perverse Devolution. And that's some more nasty looking artwork on there. So everything so far has been a Severed Records release. So definitely they weren't skipping out on this mystery box. Next up we have I'm going to butcher this, Caedere with the Lost Conveyance. And this is another. I'm just going to quit. I guess if I pull something that isn't a Severed Records release, I will mention that. This almost has post-apocalyptic vibes going on the artwork on this. Looks like you have the line of kings. Then on the back you have old dilapidated vehicles. So pretty neat looking stuff. I'll grab the next stack out and keep moving right along. Next up, we have Caustic with Hate Generation. Man, I don't even know where I'm going to start as far as listening to this stuff. I'm going to be so backed up on listening to new material. Like, it's going to put me behind on later videos because I've got so much new stuff just from that little stack of stuff that I didn't already own. Just trying to listen my way through this. It's gonna be. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's going to be fantastic to have all this new music and new material to work my way through. This one is a very dark looking cover. I might have a little trouble reading this. It looks to say Castrensis with Hierarchies. I believe that's what that one said. I'm not familiar with this one whatsoever. As you can see, that artwork on this is very, very dark. This almost has a blackened vibe going on to it, but don't quote me on that because that's one that I'm just not familiar with. Next up, we have Cenotaph. I think it's Cenotaph with a complete demo and rehearsals 94 to 96. If this is the band that I think it is, it's not the Mexican death metal band. I think this band is out of Turkey. They have a ton of releases under the banner. This is I think this one's got 5 early kind of demos compiled on here, but this is a band that has a ton of material out there, so pretty good stuff there. I'm not sure what the production value will be on those, with it being the early demos, but that was one that I'm actually pretty familiar with. Next up, we have Cliteater with Clit emails. Clit them all. Clit emails. Clit them all. Cliteater. Clit them all. Definitely some grind stuff going on Cliteater. Some pretty funny looking artwork there. I think Luke, death metal fan, may enjoy seeing this vast amount of death metal and brutal death metal being opened on my channel. It's not something that I showcase just a ton of, but it is a genre and a special. It has a special place in my collection. There is some brutal death metal and that type stuff going on in there. Lately, I've been more in a death metal mood, and this will go quite well with that kind of mood. I go through phases where I'm in moods for different types of music. Next up, we have Criminal Element with Crime and Punishment 2. This is going to be some fun stuff. I have a previous release from Criminal Element, and I heard some people knock it and that type of stuff because I mean it is kind of goofy, but I enjoyed the release that I have quite a bit, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking this one out. I didn't know they had a Crime and Punishment 2 release out, so definitely stoked and looking forward to checking that one out. Next up, we have Crypt Infection with Disentanglement. This one looks to be fairly. This one came out in 2014. I say fairly new. It's been out 6 years now. This got some pretty nasty looking artwork. This is the type of stuff that you'll generally see in my collection when it comes to brutal death metal. That very similar type artwork. So I'm definitely looking forward to giving this one a spin. I think it'll fit in quite well with some of the other stuff that I own. Finally, all this way through, we finally get to one that I already own. This is a Cystic Dysentery with Culture of Death. Nasty, nasty stuff. I picked this up from Force Fed, not just too terribly. Well, it's probably been close to a year ago now, but at a certain point, time just starts to, especially when you do a channel, time just becomes irrelevant because everything just kind of runs together. We have Disastrous with Aftermath of the Apocalypse. Some more pretty nasty looking. Man, I'm stoked. These have all been Severed Records. I honestly was afraid that I was going to be getting a ton of off distro, off label, just overstock, just garbage that they could not move. And I'm stoked, man, with just the quality of material that I've received in this so far. I think this was definitely kind of worth the price of admission for this mystery box. We're not even halfway through, so I mean, this is going to be an endeavor. Next up, we have Intimacy with Epitome of Decadence. Glad I wasn't tongue-tied because that would have been a chore to spit out. A lot of see, there we go. Alliteration. I got to bragging about blew it. Next up, this appears to be a split. We have Embryonic Depravity and Gorvent with a Malignant Opus of Inherited Depravities. Looks like we have some perhaps some UK stuff going on this with the flags in the back. It's going to be a job just listing all these in the description for you guys. The farther I get into this, the more I'm like, man, I shouldn't have promised that I would do that. Next up, we have Exaltation with Tales of Total Sickness. This is a pretty early release in the Severed lineup discography. I think this was under 100. Yeah, this came out in 2008. I knew this one had been out for a little while. Pretty good stuff, though. Definitely stoked. I like how it's a kind of a mix of different areas, different years of their releases. Next up, we have Formless Terror with Sovereign Chaos Authority. This is one that I am not familiar with. And this has MySpace on the back, so I'm assuming it's probably been out for a bit. When you see something that is linking up on MySpace, people don't really use MySpace at all anymore, I don't think. I could be wrong. Some of you may, but I don't even hear anyone talk of MySpace anymore. Next up, we're going to have one that I'm going to have trouble. Forceps. There we go. Forceps. They tried to get me with Majestic Extinction. And this is we're still rolling along with the Severed releases. Next up, we have Gastro Gastrorexis with the Dark World of Parasitic Infections. This is doing wonders for my vocabulary, if nothing else. This grab bag is expanding my verbiage. And we have one that I have no idea. It looks to be a self-titled. It's a three-way split. It looks to be some black metal, so, but I can't read. It's a three-way, I guess, kind of release between Severed, Butchered Records, and United Underground, and Hubris, perhaps. That's one I'll have to look up a little bit before. Kind of neat to see some black metal. A little bit of a change of pace in this. Very dark album cover, but it's not one that I'm just familiar with. This one looks pretty gnarly. We have Horde Casket with Xenopocalypse. That artwork on that one just looks nasty. I have a huge stack just building up here. I didn't think this through very well. Once again, we aren't even halfway through this. I'll let you know when we're halfway through. That way, if some of you are wanting to maybe stop and then pick up somewhere along the way, I do little rambles between pulling each of these stacks out as well. That way, if you want to just stop it there and then go do something or come back at another time and kind of pick up where you left off on the video, because I know it is a lot to try to take in all at once. Next up, we have got Tractonomy with Slamageddon. So I'm assuming this is a slamming brutal death metal release. If I had to guess, I'd say we got some slam going there. If I were a betting man. Next up, High in Blood with Chaos from World Orgasm. So, yeah. And we're just marching along with Severed Records releases. And that alone makes me happy because I know they have some pretty quality material throughout their entire lineup. Next up, Inbreeding Sick with Sickness and Plagues. Out of New York. This one looks pretty funny. This is Inebriated with Delirium Tremens. Yeah. That artwork. Good little white trash looking artwork going on there. Looks like some of the people that shop at my tool store from time to time. Next up, we have Inhuman Deformity with Servants of Decay. And it looks like the glare is back. Every time that I think I have the glare defeated, like the sun comes out from behind a cloud, and then I start fighting glare from the window. So, seems like some colors of album arts, it's worse on than others as well. Next up, we have Inhabit with Pray for Nothing. You know, I'm pretty impressed with the fact that out of everything that I've shown so far, there's only been one album that I already own. So that never happens, especially with a grab bag this size. I thought it was just guaranteed that I was going to own a huge chunk of this, and I'm super stoked that I do not. Next up, we have a Necro Torture with Gory Memories. Nice. Everything from the artwork to Necro Torture is nice. I'm super stoked to have this in the collection now. This will probably get a listen pretty early on as I'm kind of digging my way through this box. Getting to the point now where some of them are starting to fall. All right, we're just going to keep going. we have Nocturnal Hellstorm, self-titled. And this is another kind of split release between Severed Records and United Underground. So I'm wondering if this has got some kind of blackened vibes going on. It looks just from the looks of it, I would say probably so. And that doesn't deter me in the least. It'll be a nice little kind of change of pace going through some of this stuff. Next up, we have a Parasitic Extirpation with Putrid Crown. I've been pretty impressed with just some of the artworks. This one was released in 2014. Still chomping away at Severed releases, but I've been pretty impressed with some of the artworks on this. That's something that would kind of stick out to me if I was looking through albums trying to decide what I was going to get and what I was going to listen to. That's something that I would check out just based on the artwork alone. Here's a band that I enjoy. I do not own this release. I own some of their other material. This is a Putrefy with Knelt Before the Sarcophagus of Humanity. This is one that I'm glad now that I haven't picked up from maybe a force-fed March order or Brutal Bands order. I made a Brutal Bands order yesterday against my better judgment because I was afraid. I didn't want to just place that order because I was afraid some of that stuff might be in this grab bag. But so far, so good. Here's one that I do already own. This is a Putrefying Cadaverment with Indiscriminate Butchery. This is one that I haven't had very long. I think this was given to me as a freebie in an order I placed not too long ago. But so I mean, with these duplicates, like I said, I never have much trouble finding a place to rehome them. Usually, you guys like the giveaways and that type stuff, and I like doing them. So this is a band that I remember. I used to have an album from them, and the artwork on it just made me it made me not even want to listen to it. They have like I guess they're just kind of known for grotesque artwork, and this one is no different just from looking at it. This is a Rottenness with Die Wedge der Lust. Yeah, it's got some old saggy titties going on that. I'm not going to spend too much time on that artwork. This will get flagged and removed, and I would hate that because put this much time and effort into a video. Next up, we have Rupture Christ with Molesting the Entrails of the Disemboweled. Some more pretty nasty looking artwork there. You got your scalpel and your dissection tools there going on the back. Pretty gnarly looking stuff. Next up, we have Sanguinary Execution with Infinity Space of Barbarity. And this has got some nasty looking artwork on this too. That's kind of got that classic brutal death metal artwork going. Next up, we have Scalpel with Sorrow and Skin. That was probably the easiest to pronounce album title and band name that I've come across so far. So Scalpel, I salute you, and I'm very appreciative of you at this point in the game. Next up, we have Rotting Repugnancy with Path of the Diminished. Some more nasty looking artwork. I could just sit here and look at some of these artworks, some of these kind of grotesque looking artworks all day. That's the good thing about brutal death metal, man. You get some of the best artwork, some of the most hilarious artwork on your albums. All right, after I finish this little batch, we will be halfway through already. 25 minutes in and only not even halfway through the grab bag yet. Next up, we have Severed Limbs. In each scenario, you die. And we are still going with the... Most of these have pretty much been in alphabetical order. I'm imagining once I get to the end of the alphabet with this run, then probably the non-severed titles and distro stock is going to kick in. Here we go. The Gurchik Tree with Sadistic's Reflections of Blood. I would have never got the Gertrude tree from that from that logo. Pretty nasty looking stuff though. Next up, we have the Sickening with Sadistic Self-Mutilation. And this is also some nasty, nasty looking artwork. One corpses, it's like corpses mutilating themselves. Very gory looking stuff. Next up, we have Verminous with Depraved Institution. Definitely stoked to have this one. Can't wait to listen to this one either. This one has some. That's another one that has kind of the artwork that I think would have drawn my attention had I just seen this out in the wild somewhere, like just kind of flipping through albums. I think it's something that I would have it definitely given a second look at, if nothing else. Next up, we have Vomit Stain with Piles of Human Debris. This one is got a split of, it's got PRC Music, Severed Records. It's got a few others on there as well. This is In the Burial with Born of Suffering. This is one that I've seen around on distros and sites quite often. I haven't ever given it a listen though, so this was one that's I've definitely seen this around. I just never taken the time to actually check that out. Next up, we have Layla Hell with Al Intar. Yeah, that's one. I'm having it. Yeah, that might be one you have to hunt down in the description if you want to check that one out. It might, some of you might already know that, but just the font that they have going on that release makes it hard for me to read it, and it's the same font on the spine as well. So, and I just don't have time to go digging too far to figure that out. Next up, we have Skull Collector with Disfigured Insanity, and we're still knocking away at Severed Records releases. My biggest fear is that after I get done recording this, and I get to the point where I'm typing in all of the album titles and band names, is that either I knock a stack of these over or something and completely lose my place because I have them all stacked in the order that I'm going to type them in, that I've shown them. Next up, we have Murder Intentions with Conception of a Virulent Breed. That's pretty nasty looking stuff too. That's another one that I think I would take a second glance at just from that cover art. I know they say don't judge an album by its cover, but a lot of times to me the album art is very important just from the fact that that's the first thing that draws you in, especially if you're doing either a blind buy or you're trying to find something new. I just think that album artwork is very important. Next up, we have a Writhing Afterbirth with Defaced, Defiled, and Devoured. We are halfway through. We have shown 50 CDs. We have 50 left to go. I say we've shown 50, assuming that there's 50 in each line of this this box here. I haven't taken the time to just count them. Okay, next step. 30 minutes in, halfway through. So this may turn into an hour video. I think this line will probably move a little quicker just because I'm getting dry mouth and that type stuff. Next up, we have Stelino with Conflict, and this is the first kind of distro stock. This has a grindy look to me. I really don't know much about this. It was released on Eclectic Records. Not a label I'm too familiar with, so this is something that is brand new to me. Don't know anything about that. Next up, we have Splattered Mermaids with Reforged in Gore. This was released on Morbid Generation and Severed. That's some nasty looking artwork on that one. I said, I'm probably just going to have a good time on my next day off. Just, sorry that back artwork got me. That on my next day off, I'm probably just going to have a good old time going through and spending some time, more time going through this box and just looking at the artworks and listening to the music. Next up, we have Sturmgewehr 666 with Challenging Crossreich Cowards. There you go. Maybe some NS stuff going on that one. Not quite sure. Not really knowing. It's on Old Cemetery Records. I don't really know too much about this release though, to just say too much about it. So definitely no apologies going on that one. Next up, we have Strung Up and Direct Control Splits. If I had to guess, this was released through No Way Records and Tank Crimes. Almost has a very grindy look to me. Could be completely wrong on that. I don't know. I don't know what to expect with this one. I don't know what to expect with that at all. It almost looks out of place just from that artwork and some of the stuff that we've seen so far. Next up we have looks like it's Soul Wicked with Death's Crown. I can't read the spine. Yeah. Soul Wicked with Death's Crown. That's what I'm assuming that is. This was released through Abyss Records, so this is another one that I'm not just familiar with, but definitely looking forward to checking that out. Finally, one that another one that I already own. This is a Spectral Manifest with this was released on Ossuary Industries. This is a self-titled, I believe. Pretty good stuff. I haven't listened to the album in quite some time, but I don't remember just a ton about it. But I do remember enjoying it. So next up, we have Slaughter Brute with Excellent Meat. This was released on Coyote Records. I don't know how. I guess it just depends on how you pronounce either Coyote or Coyote. So. Next up, we have the Cleansing with Poison Legacy. I actually own some cleansing material, but I do not own this release. When I saw the spine, I thought this was going to be another that I actually own, but I do not. So that's pretty awesome to add some more cleansing to the collection that I didn't already own. So I've been stoked. I think I've hit maybe 3 or 4 CDs so far, and that's it that I already had in the collection. That it's kind of blowing my mind. I was expecting to open this up and already own just the vast majority of this, especially with all of the Gorehouse grab bags that I used to do and Grind State Records grab bags and that type of stuff. I just knew that I was going to be already in possession of a lot of this stuff. Next up, we have Tentacles with the self-title. I don't know if I still own this or not. I know I had this at one point. I may have actually sold my copy, and if I did, I'm kind of glad to have this back in the collection now. So I think at one point, if this is the album that I'm remembering, I think they kind of make fun of at Korn at one point in this. So if I do not have this in the collection already, I'm stoked to have it back. If I do have it, then I know a couple of people I think that will be stoked to get their hands on that. So pretty good stuff right there. Next up, we have Torn the Fuck Apart with Sexually Transmitted Torture. So definitely stoked. I have the newest release from them, so stoked to have this one in the collection now as well. That was released. I'm pretty sure that one was on. Now that was on Ossuary. For some reason, I thought that was on Gorehouse. So I think the newest release was released through Gorehouse. Next up, we have Suture with Carnivorous Urge to Kill. I do already own this release. This was released on Comatose Records. Pretty good brutal death metal. I mean, all of this, the majority of this stuff I'm showing is brutal death metal, so it seems kind of like a cop out. Just like, hey, this is brutal death metal, but that's what it is. It's pretty good stuff. Next up, we have Suppuration. I think Suppuration with the face rotten by some satanic possession. So I think that says Suppuration. I'm wanting to say that that was a band that was also later signed on Gorehouse that released a pretty touted release, but unfortunately I just haven't checked it out. So that's the band that I think it is. I think I'm kind of in for a treat on that. Next up, we have Simurin with Cyclist Av Helheim. Yeah, not too familiar with this. Maybe some NS looking stuff just from the looks. I don't want to just come out and say that's what it is, because you know that's some people could take that as a pretty serious statement. So that's just the kind of the vibe I'm getting from the artwork, but I really don't know. This is one that I'm just not familiar with at all. So just that logo. But like I said, I'm kind of ignorant to that band, so I'm not going to say that that's what that is. Next up, we have Thirst of Revenge with Sinner. This is some pretty nasty looking stuff here. Really digging that artwork. Much obliged to you that are still watching at this point. We're almost 40 minutes in. If you're still watching and following along on this video, then thanks. I appreciate you sticking through. Next up, we have the Pragmatist with the Inevitability of Disaster. Not familiar with that one whatsoever. Not a big fan of that artwork. This will probably be one that's kind of later on in me checking out through all of these. It looks to be some straight grind. It has like 1 minute songs and that type of stuff. It is hand numbered 456 out of 501, but I'm not familiar with that at all. Next up, we have the Monolith Death Cult with the White Crematorium 2.0. So, not much going on that artwork on this artwork either. This was released on Epitome Records. It's got 16 tracks. So I'm wondering if maybe that is some more grindy type stuff. Okay. Next up, we have 3 Victims with exhibits A, B, and C. And that's pretty much all the information you get on that release. Because there's the back, and it pretty much just says the same thing. 3 Victims, exhibits A, B, and C. So I don't really... It's like it has 7 tracks. I don't know too much about that one. So not going to speak too much on something that I don't know. So, all right, we have Repulsive Deeds of Sodomy, 4-way split, 2011. And I don't know. I don't know what bands. I can't read those just off the top of my head. I see the Anal Treatment. Yeah, so don't know too much on that one. Hard to read that. I'll try to do a little bit more research on that when I'm putting the stuff in the description. My apologies, but I just can't. I'm not at a point where I can just spend a ton of time on each release. Next up, we have Rex Shachath with a Sepulchral Torment. That's some pretty nasty looking artwork. This was released on Hostile Media and Code 7. So, pretty nasty looking stuff there. You can definitely tell that we're getting out of some of the Severed Records releases at this point. Next up, we have Reincarnation, the beginning of the end. I do not own this. I do own some stuff from Reincarnation that I do enjoy. Has a very almost old school death metal vibe going on. That has some of that 90s feel going on in the stuff that I own. I think the stuff that I own was released around. This one was released in 2016, but I'm hoping it still has that old feel going on with some stuff from Reincarnation. So definitely stoked to have that in the collection now. Definitely looking forward to checking that one out. Next up, we have Rancid Flesh with Pathological Zombie Carnage. This is 25 tracks of grindy goodness. You can just look at that. That just screams grindcore. Next up, we have Saprobiotic with Science of War, and this is another Severed release. You can kind of tell the quality. This one's a split between Severed and Morbid Generation, but like just the artworks on these Severed releases, you can like tell a difference right off the bat sometimes. Next up, we have Sarcoma with Visceral. And one thing I'm enjoying with this mystery box is that I'm getting some stuff that I own some other material from these bands. Like there's been several of these that I own other releases from the same band. So this is kind of expanding on the discographies in the collection. So I'm pretty stoked about that. It has some of the stuff, some of the lesser known stuff from some of these bands in this mystery box. So that's pretty awesome. Next up, we have No One Gets Out Alive with Old Shack Stories. This was released on Morbid Generation Records and Severed. Definitely, I kind of want to check this one out. I'm looking forward to this one. This seems like something that might be up my alley. I like that kind of backwoods brutal music. Next up, we have Necrotize with Apocalypse Conception. Yeah. I'm probably going to have a sore throat by the time I get done with this. I don't know how some of you people have these like streams and stuff where you just get on and talk for hours and hours on end. I would die. I would have no voice at the end. Just bear with me. We're about 3/4 of the way through. We're almost done. We're in the final stretch now, so getting through these. I've been pretty impressed with this. I'm definitely looking forward to checking a lot of this stuff out. I definitely think it was worth the kind of the price to get into this. Next up, we have Necrotic Chaos with Regime Grotesque. And this was released on Phylum Records. Next up, we have Necro with Gore Ceremony. This one looks like it was colored with color pencils. This was on, I can't read that label. It looks a little better actually showing on the camera than it looked just to my naked eye. The camera definitely did that some justice there. There we go. Next up, we have Murder Made God with Irreverence. This is one that I almost picked up from Brutal Bands. It actually was released on Brutal Bands. I almost picked this up. A couple of orders. I almost threw a Brutal Bands order and a Force Fed order. So kind of nice to get it in this mystery box. Next up, we have Necro Beast with Realms of Eternal Torment. That one looks pretty nasty. It's like you got the devil standing guard there. It's got that shrink wrap on this one, that kind of loose shrink wrap. It looks like those are horrible on the glare. I guess this one is self-released. I don't see a label or anything on that one. Next up, we have Ocean of Zero. There we go. Ocean of Zero with something sickness, where sickness prevails. Ocean of Zero with where sickness prevails. That is a pretty, the font. Well, I guess I could have got the Ocean of Zero off the font. I was trying to read the spine on the font on the spine there is not easy to read. It looks like it has two separate demos. It has the Wake and Shun the Light, both of those demos on this, and it's just entitled somewhere Where Sickness Prevails. It's the name of the compilation there. So we have Deuce Autopsy with Godless. I actually may have this in the collection. It seems like I got this in a big lot a few years ago, and unfortunately, if I do, it's not something that was that memorable. Um, I guess it'll be time for me to check it out again if kind of give it another listen. Sometimes if something sits for a while and then I pull it off the shelf and listen to it, it's almost like listening to it again for the first time. And I find something that I sometimes I enjoy stuff upon that second or third listen that I did not enjoy at all on that original listen. Next up, we have Devouring Humanity. This was released on White Box and Lord of the Sick Records. That's got some pretty nasty looking artwork on that one too. This one I took a little time with. It kind of caught my attention. It's one, especially with this section of the box kind of falling off with some of the stuff. The Severed releases were pretty high up there, and some of this stuff has been either hit or miss. And that one really caught my attention more than some of these others have at this section of the box. Next up, we have Despise the Sun with Embers of the Almighty. I've seen this one on tons of distros, marked down super cheap. This was released on Ossuary Industries. I have not heard this, but I've seen people trying to dump this album quite often, so I don't have huge hopes for it, but I could be blown away by this. It says Rocky Mountain Hydro Guttural. So I mean it's something that sometimes when you don't have high hopes for something, you are pleasantly surprised. Next up, we have Down from the Wound with Violence and the Macabre. This is another one that I've seen on a few, especially the sites that this was released on Comatose Music, so I'm sure it was a bit more readily available. I've seen this one on a few different distro sites as well. I guess now is my chance. I've been seeing some of this stuff all over. It's my chance to finally check it out. So next up, we have Devolution with the End of Humanity. This almost looks like a movie soundtrack. It is not, but it has a very, that looks like a movie poster. Next up, we have Desecracy with a Stoic Death or Stoic Death. This was released on Extreme Music. Don't hear a whole lot from Extreme Music anymore. I don't know if they're still around. This was released in 2015. Actually, something I need to look a little more into kind of the Extreme Music lineup and discography, because I have heard some pretty good stuff from Extreme Music, and like in retrospect and looking back, but it's not a label or something that I've actually just purposely seeked out, and perhaps I need to do that at some point. This one, Duo Dildo Vibrator with a Apokalupsis Now. So I think we have some porno grind, if I had to guess. That's hilarious. Duo Dildo Vibrator presents Apokalupsis Now. I had to make sure I read that right, but hey, I don't know. We'll give it a shot. That might be one I have to listen to with the headphones on in the house. Next up, we have Cicatrix with Beloved and Killing. This was released on Brute Productions. Don't know much about that one, but it looks to be some pretty brutal stuff. I mean, it has brute right there in the label name, so it has to have some kind of brutality going on with that. Next up, we have Coathanger Abortion with Observations in Humanity. This is another Comatose Records release. Pretty solid stuff right here. Like I said, this like little last section of this box has been pretty hit or miss. There's been some pretty solid stuff, and there's been some stuff that's kind of, I don't know if it's going to be what I'm digging. It just because something's not perhaps something that I dig has no indication whether you will dig it or not. Just pulled the last stack out. We're almost done, guys. That is the bottom of the box. Once again, thank you guys so much that have actually stuck through this entire video. Next up, we have a Cerebral Effusion with Smashed and Splattered Organs. My entire collection just got a just heavy dose of brutal death metal and grind and that type of stuff. Next up, we have Asylum with Global Decomposition. That jewel case, unfortunately, got a little crunched. It's inside of the plastic, but I did order, I think, 50 just spare jewel cases. So I have cases that I can put some of these if they were busted. Next up, we have, I always butcher this band's name. I see this everywhere, and I always have the hardest time pronouncing it. Agathicals and Untamed looks like to be a split with Gordom equals Boredom and Savage on Stage. I'm not going to butcher their name again. I always have so much trouble, and I see that band name everywhere, just a grindy type stuff. I mean, both sides of this appear to be grind. I've never heard of Untamed, but they look to be just more that they all have the between 30-second to a minute and a half song running times there. So nice little slab of grindy goodness going on there. Next up, we have Intestinal Extirpation with Swallowing Humans for a New Amorphous Breed. Seems like I had another Intestinal Extirpation in this box already. I could be wrong at this point. I've had a ton of stuff just hitting the brain all at once. So perhaps not, but perhaps this was released on a split between Severed and Goresimo Records. Goresimo. Next up, we have Ghoul Necropsy with the Wrong Side of the Saw. We have Gestos Grosserios with Satan Chandizing. Don't know anything about that one. It does look interesting. It looks like kind of cheap looking artwork on that. I don't know what it is about this one that makes me want to check this out. There's just something about it that's calling out to me saying, hey, listen to me. I actually will probably listen to that one pretty early on, and there's no indication from that to make me know why I would want to do so, but for some reason that one's just kind of calling to me. Next up we have Foul Body Autopsy with Perpetuated by Greed. This is another one that I've seen this album a few different places for sale before, and I've just never pulled the trigger on it. This was released in 2016 through a bunch of different labels, Comatose being the most prevalent, most recognizable. That's another one that I'm kind of looking forward to checking out. But next up, we have, I have no idea, Flesh Juice with something, the Brutal Taichung. No wonder I couldn't read it. I don't think the majority of that stuff was it. Okay, Flesh Juicer with the Brutal Taikung, I guess is I was like, how am I supposed to read that? It is not in English. A lot of that is not in English, but luckily they put some English and translated it for me, because we would have been stumbling over that one. This is one that I do already own. This is a Goratorium with Homicidal Ideation. I do already have this release, so I think we're up to either 4 or 5 out of the 100. You cannot beat that. A 5% already owned percentage out of 100 CDs. I mean, yeah. Next up, we have Hypermenorrhea and Disgorgement of Intestinal Lymphatic Suppuration. I guess that's the name of the album. No, it's a split. Okay, I was right the first time. Hypermenorrhea is the first band. They have 8 tracks, and then Disgorgement of Intestinal Lymphatic Suppuration has 12 tracks, 13 tracks. So probably some more grind, if I were to guess. There we go. And then last but not least, the last album of this grab bag is Helvetron with Death Scroll of 7 Hells, and it's, and I'm gonna have to take this one. It's got like a film, a cloudy film over the plastic film. So we get to the last CD, and it has to draw out a little bit longer for me to. Okay, we have Helvetron with Death of 7 Scrolls, and it's something Majesties. Infernal Majesties. Helvetron, Death Scroll of 7 Hells, 7 Bells or 7 Hells. They need to find some better fonts for this stuff, man. Death Scroll of 7 Hells, and it's Infernal I butchered that up. I'm not spending any more time with that. This was released on Hell's Headbangers, so we had a Hell's Headbangers thrown there in the very last. So Helvetron, I'm definitely looking forward to giving that one a spin as well. Yeah, I'm wore out. I know you guys got to be. I feel sorry for you that actually watched this all the way through and watched an idiot stumble over album titles and band names for an hour. I do appreciate you doing so. I will link up, as I said in the description, Severed Records. I will also link up the link to their storefront where you can purchase a grab bag, one of these grab bags, if you feel so inclined. I'm going to just, I guess, bite the bullet and list all of these albums in order for you guys as well. That's going to take me some time to do so, but I will do it. If you're going to take the time to watch the video, then the least I can do is take the time to list the albums for you guys. That's all I've got for today, thankfully. I'm exhausted. I know you guys are for watching. Thank you. Stay classy, stay metal. Get your hands on one of these. I think you'll enjoy it. All that good stuff. I will see you all very soon. I promise.